Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of The Greatest Profession Podcast. On this episode, we will be talking to TJ Muse. TJ is a relief itinerant veterinarian, much like myself. But when I met him, he was a medical director at a very busy emergency specialty center in the middle of North Carolina, Carolina veterinary specialist at Greensboro. And we talked about it a bunch during the podcast. So spoiler alert, that's where he did a lot of the work and that's where we met. We actually kind of go through his whole journey. So I'm going to go ahead and let the podcast unfold as is and kind of just slip into this for a second, which is it's been a little while. As it turns out, about 4 weeks ago, I had a kid. Well, I didn't. I was there. Lindsay had a kid, and we have been dealing with the aftermath ever since. It's going about as well as it can go. It's just a lot of exhaustion, and anytime that you try to do anything whatsoever, clean the dishes, get the laundry done, edit a podcast, he knows. He's aware, and he's like, "You're not paying attention to me." I was like, okay, all right, buddy. Yeah, and then he just like has this like sort of creaky door quality to his cries, his little like, and then he'll just like fully abrupt into it. So those have been our weeks. It's been so heartwarming. Now, I'll talk about the whole thing at another point. I mean, truly, it's going as well as it can go. It's of course exhausting. It's full of little kind of cool surprises, and it's neat, but also very challenging. It's all of those things. But in the interest of, hey, I have a moment to get away and record one of these intros, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and let the podcast take it from here, and we can talk about my life with child at some later point. So, without further ado, TJ Muse on this, The Greatest Profession Podcast.
It's really hard to watch that, and especially with, all the pressures. I think back when I was a kid, and I thought it was hard, but all the pressures they deal with, I just feel like it's almost worse now, than even what we dealt with. The social media thing is just terrible in my eyes, because I think my age and even your age, we know how to separate from that stuff a little bit more.
Right.
It's almost a part of their DNA. So, it's difficult, but they're managing pretty well. I just, it's always a worry for me. And even like, talking about like depression in general, like I think it's one of those things. It's like it's too easy for it to happen. I feel like even now, because we don't know how to step away and just like look at the birds. I'll go outside
Right.
and I'll see the first thing I do when I let my dog out, Coda, in the morning. He's looking to chase a squirrel. I'm looking to see the squirrels moving around, like digging, or the birds flying. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
And I look and I try and take those moments more, especially now with, I think, all the stresses in life, and just look up at the sky and say, man, I'm lucky to even be alive. If you just take the basic things and try and apply them to your life, life can be good. It's all about perspective, but it's hard for the kids though. And you can't, the only thing you can do is just be there. Literally, sometimes you can just be there, because as a parent, it's almost like you get to a point and you can't even say the right thing. You know what I mean? It's like they don't want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember being a kid and being that, like, you don't understand. It's like, this many years later, like, they probably did.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. And maybe it is perspective. I mean, I think that as time goes on, of course, we gain perspective. Like, perspective comes with that experience, and then, intentionally sort of taking those moments, like you're saying. Whereas, when you're a kid, you just don't have it. You're just so overwhelmed. Everything seems like everything.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that's exacerbated by the social media thing.
Yeah,
it's hard. I don't know how to. I don't know. I don't know what to do. And I guess you're in the middle of it now, but maybe it'll be another 10, 15 years before I'm in the middle of it. But
It
is
starts
concerning.
right away.
Oh,
It
great.
starts with
Right. Fantastic.
it just evolves, and that's kind of the beauty of it too. Though, is that parenting is imperfect. Most people look at, oh, you're the perfect. No, no, and it's no. I don't care what book you read. It's so different for everyone. But that's what I've come to appreciate. The beauty behind parenting is that it's imperfect, and that you're you're creating this individual, but they're still individuals, and
Yeah.
so then you get to a point where you're just guiding them and they're becoming their own. And for me, I've really enjoyed these last several years just seeing them transition into adulthood. Now they get on my nerves when it comes to like cleaning up, and it's just the normal stuff that
Sure.
I did as a kid, but it's like I'm like, I can see when you're not here. Like, I want you here, but I can see when you're not here, and I'm not having to like do these things to
Right.
clean up after you. Just the simple stuff. And my wife's like, she doesn't care. She's like, oh, I know it's gonna be weird when they're gone. I was like, is it though? I think it's gonna be kind of nice at the
Yeah.
same time. You know, but I don't know. I don't think I don't think there's a perfect
Right.
parent out there, which makes it awesome.
It's interesting. So, I mean, with your daughter, she's like ready for college, and
Hmm.
that means that like she'll be leaving the house soon, or is she sticking
Yeah.
around? Wow.
No, no, no. She'll be leaving the house.
No,
No, she is. She
no,
is.
no, no.
No, no. I want her to get that experience.
Mhm.
Because I enjoyed college, and it was an experience that I didn't know I was going to enjoy. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Why? Out of curiosity.
yeah. So in high school, I was a bit of an introvert, and so um, I didn't like drama, and there was a lot of that. So I stayed away from that. Girls were pretty awesome, like as far as looks, but they were dramatic, so I stayed away from that. And I had just a small, very small, like grouping of friends, and
Mm,
we were kind of nerdy and dorky. I don't know how you put it. We were
yeah.
ourselves, but it was fun. So for me, having to leave home and then go to a place where the bunch of people where they're going to want to talk to you, for me was like a bit overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
like I don't really want to like so it really was kind of scary. And the only reason it was like I was doing this because I knew I had to do it to transition into the career that I wanted to have. If I had it myself and they had an online version or something
Right.
back in I probably would have chose that. But
Yeah.
it ended up working out, and it helped me to grow. But I was really nervous, really unsure, and I immediately became sure when I met my roommate. He was amazing. Still friends with him to this day.
Nice.
We both played soccer there together, so we were on the same team. And then I really knew when I was like, and this is silly because I struggled a bit and I won't go into too much either, but I struggled a bit my freshman year because I had too much freedom. But
Mm.
I knew when I overslept and I woke up and my roommate came back and he had made the class, and I was like, did the teacher say anything? He's like, no. I was like, I was like, she didn't say anything. I wasn't there, and we went to like kind of a small thing. He's like, no. I was like, wow, I can like miss class and like no one's gonna be like on my back,
Right.
which
Right.
was which was not good in and of
Right.
itself initially because I had too much freedom. But
Yeah.
but I knew then I was like, golly, you get that freedom,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize as a kid that it was really like a stepping stone to adulthood. It was like I just get this freedom. I get to go to school. I get to play soccer,
Right.
and so it ended up being pretty awesome in the end.
Y-
But definitely nervous about it initially.
Yeah, I mean that free time, that like that whole kind of flexibility of schedule and like the freedom, you can definitely hang
Hmm.
yourself with it. I
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
also struggled the first couple of years. I'm like, I there's so much time, and I'm done
Yes.
studying. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yes, exactly.
And my mom was like,
Exactly.
you can't have a job, you can't do it because you have to focus on your schoolwork. And I'm like, I have
Yeah.
more from like time now than I've ever had in my entire
Yes.
life.
And you
So
don't realize it. Like
yeah,
it was literally some of the best stuff. But yeah, the time, and you mentioned study, my first year was not I I didn't really have to do much in high school, and
right.
I still did well. And I think for most kids. Like, you don't realize it until you go to the college setting. In college, they don't care about homework,
Right.
classwork. You get tests, and
Hmm.
you actually have to study for those tests, and you have to pay attention in class, you know? So me, you know, being the naivete person that I was, I went in and uh, basically didn't study and said, "Oh, I can study," you know, the night
Right.
before, and I think I had like a 2.27, you know, and I had so much time, but I didn't utilize that time, you
Yeah.
know. But that was it is a lot of time in college. It's probably the most time you're ever gonna have. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
That's
probably the
true.
most time, and you don't even realize it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but
I mean, to your point though, like because I also did, I did fine in high school without having to, worry about actually doing much. Like I would do the homework
hmm
in class, right? And then I would like,
exactly,
right.
exactly.
But yeah, so like I would look at the stuff and then I guess I looked at the wrong stuff or whatever it was. Yeah. So my first semester, well, I did quarters. My first quarter was okay. My second quarter failed. Like I failed out of the whole quarter. Like third
hmm
quarter,
hmm
okay. And then my second
hmm
year, same thing. And so like I was going into the end of my second year. I'm like, am I going to graduate college?
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah,
but that's the time like that I picked up a couple extra jobs. I like, I
yeah.
decided, I'm just going to finish this quicker. So I just jammed it all in, which maybe is not
Oh
too
my god.
dissimilar to how my life is now.
Yeah.
But like by
Yeah.
doing that, like that's when I actually started making grades and, passing classes and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I had the same situation. I came
Hmm.
out and I had like a withdrawal, a D, a C, and
Yeah.
a B was like my highest grade for like the second semester. And I was like, oh man, my mom's gonna be pissed at me. So
Sure.
I went home, and my sister did something similar. So it was like a reliving it for my mom, and
Great.
she and I should, yeah, yeah. So she was like, I'm not paying for you get one more chance,
Right.
And so I sat down and I was like, man, do I really want to major in biology? It's going to be hard. How am I going to do this? That was my thing. So, but, failure, it's got such a negative connotation, but it's really a life lesson. That's the way we should look at it. Like, it's a life lesson. And really, those that succeed or successful have some form of failure in their life. Like,
Oh yeah.
so no matter what it is, you can use even the smallest thing, but college, failures, a class, even failures like what I would consider people might consider life failures is probably not the right thing. Like not having a parent or something else like that. Like those things make you a great individual, in my opinion. Like you
Yeah.
need that to really see the other side and where
Yeah.
and where you could end up.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. And that's like, I know I talk about like improv a lot, but that's one of the things that you see like in real time. It's like these
hmm
little, I don't know, like maybe micro failures or something where you're just like, you're on stage, you have to make this thing. It's like, well, that joke didn't land.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
boy, like this
yeah,
was not interesting at all. And then, yeah, but it's like you have to take that chance so that you can eventually figure out, what your style is or what the joke is or whatever. But yeah, like
yeah,
that's the same with everything. And I forget there's like that saying where it's like you have to be lying in the gutter to like truly see the stars.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like- I think that, yeah, it's like it really, maybe it just allows you again, like more perspective or allows you some sort of like baseline where you're like, okay, well, I can't do this. Like, this is real
hmm
haptic information of like, I cannot keep, showing up to class and not doing well, or I cannot keep,
hmm
whatever.
yeah. And let
Mm.
me ask you this. So I'm just curious so what got you to the point, like, did you know you wanted to be like specific, like go to vet school? What
Oh no.
when you really?
Yeah, no, not at all.
Oh my
I
gosh.
when I went to undergrad, my thought
Uh-huh.
was to do neuroscience. So like my
Oh
mom was
wow.
this, yeah, my mom was a speech pathologist. She worked with a lot of brain injury and stroke patients. And then there was one guy in particular that she did a lot of work with, and his name was Ramachandran. And he like wrote this book, and I, talked to him a bunch, and I love that book. And it was just all of
hmm
these, little small things. So it's like someone got into a car accident, and then like this just like this little connection between the fusiform gyrus and the limbic system like got disconnected, and now they like, you know, they got prosopagnosia, like they can't recognize your face, or they can but they don't quite know who you are. And like that stuff was so interesting. So I went to
Yeah.
UCSD so that I could work with him, and then also kind of be around my family because I had like
Yeah.
brothers that were just born at that time.
Wow.
But yeah, and then I decided, well, I didn't want to necessarily major in neuroscience. Like that seemed too simple or straightforward. So I like tried to do physics, but like, you know, see our
Oh
previous
my
conversation,
gosh.
where it's like every winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I knew that
Wow.
I always wanted to kind of do the sciences, and medicine was always super interesting, but it wasn't until like, you know, I was probably 29, and my, you know, ex at the time or my
Yeah.
girlfriend at the time, like she wanted to do vet school, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, this sounds pretty good.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
So not at all.
That's cool though.
Yeah,
That's
I think it
pretty
was a cool
cool.
way in. Um,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you did. Like you wanted to know when you
Oh
were.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was it if I'm telling the story, and my mom would agree somewhat, I was like four or five, you know.
Now is your opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. If I was telling the story, my grandfather, he had like a farm, but the farm was not a farm that you produce for others. It was like just like a family farm, and so, but like we would have a pig, they would have like chickens, they would have cows, but it was for use. Like at the end of the year, you would butcher them and they would eat them, and then they had they would grow all the crops and stuff. So it was one of those things where they lived simply, but really because they didn't have the income to do that stuff, they had enough. It was cheap enough to farm and buy, you know, a cow or a pig and then eat that through the winter or however long you eat it. So I would go out there and hang with him when he would feed the goats, brush the horse or whatever was a part of that. And so for me, I was like, I really like animals. Like that's my first like interest in science was with an animal, you know. So
Right.
I started that, and so I went to my mom when we were leaving, and I was like a little bit upset. I was like, I don't really want to leave. I was like, can we have a farm? She's like, no, we don't have you know, we were like in a townhouse or like an
Right.
apartment or something. She's like, we don't have this set up for that. And she was like, and I think you're allergic because every time we come, which I was, come to find out, I'm allergic to my job, but but yeah, she's like, I think you're allergic because you always like sneeze and all this stuff when you're coming back.
Yeah.
And so she was like, and then we got in the conversation about, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, well, I want to do that. I want to take care of the farm animals.
Cool.
And she equated that to veterinarian. She's like, oh, you want to be a veterinarian? I was like,
Yeah.
sure. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't know
sure.
what
I don't
that
know
meant. I was
definitions
like, I
yet.
don't know what that means. If it means being around the farm animals, then yes,
Yeah.
you know, at
Yeah.
4 years old. And so I stuck with it. And then the weird thing is that my mom was so supportive and like helping me to grow and to help me with my, you know, my love for science. Like I'll give you an example. Something called the Trials of Life. I don't know if you ever heard of a guy called David Attenborough.
Oh yeah.
He's yeah. So he's on like all this stuff, like the Netflix series, like Planet
Yeah.
Earth, and all these other things are going on. But his first things that I remember him from were something called Trials of Life, and this is going to date me. It came in a VHS, and they would release
Yeah.
VHS. I don't even know if everybody would come in a
Yeah.
VHS, and they would
Give the
release.
clamshell.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And they would release one once a month, and I would
Wow.
watch it. It was basically just on like animals interactions, like the ants and how they would communicate, and like fish, and oh, watch out for a predator. And so I watched the entire series and I rewatched them, and then I was like, well, this is amazing. So
Mm.
I went into that, and once again, my mom was like, well, you're allergic, because I was asking for like a dog, or she's like, oh, you're allergic. I don't think she just didn't want the dog, but so we can start with a bird. I was like, all right, cool. So I got me a little parakeet,
Ah.
and so I love that parakeet. Like,
Hmm.
but the parakeet was mean. Like it would bite the shit out of me. So I mean, it really would. It was really, really fucking mean. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, dude, I can't have a bird that's this mean. So I was like,
Right.
all right, this is what, in my genius, I was like, well, what can I do to make this bird nicer? So I get this garter glove that like where it can't tear my skin off, and I just
Right.
hold it there for a second and like rub it every so often where it can't bite me,
Yeah.
and it worked. Like I
Huh.
just did it. Literally, it was like I just held it. I think for like it probably seemed like an attorney for the bird. I'm sure. I'm lucky
I'm
the
sure.
bird didn't have heart disease or something because I know it's freaking out.
Right.
But that bird was the sweetest bird ever. Like it would
Huh.
sit on my shoulder, never bit again. And then that graduated to me getting two, and then I eventually got a cockatiel, and then I got a fish tank, and finally my mom let me get a dog.
Hmm.
And it was a little puppy. She surprised me, and then my allergies went haywire, and then
Right.
yeah, it's pretty bad. But it was, and I got tested. It was so funny. She got me tested. I don't know if they do that now, but they would do like injections in your
Yeah,
back
like
or
the little
something like that.
bubbles under the
Yeah,
skin.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
bubbles.
yeah.
And of the 28 things, I think I tested positive for like something like 18 or something. So,
Mm.
you know, and the doctor was like, after that, he's like, yeah, you can't have a dog. And we went
Yeah.
home, and I was crying. I was like, Mom, we cannot get rid of my dog. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be fine. I'll just take some Benadryl or whatever else. And so, yeah, so we kept the dog, and I managed. And I think my allergies over time I just got habituated. It's kind of like when you get the allergy shots. If you're
Right, right,
around
right.
it long enough,
Yeah.
you're either going to have anaphylaxis or you're going to be okay. So, so so I ended
Yeah.
up on the other spectrum, but yeah, that I always knew I wanted to be a veterinarian. And so when I went to undergrad, I was like, I want to go to vet school.
Yeah.
And then it was so funny when I met she's my now wife. I met her in undergrad. Um, we were getting ready to graduate, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to vet school, and I had to take a year off because I had to do some stuff. But in the interim, she was just like, huh, well, you're going to graduate school. She's like, I guess I'll get a grad degree. That's
Nice.
literally what she said. So she was
That's
like, and then she just starts looking through a book. She's like, oh, that sounds interesting. So she picks one. I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's almost like, this preordained, I want to be a veterinarian. Like, maybe it's better to do it the way she did it,
right.
So, but no,
Right.
I had a goal of doing that. And so I stuck with it.
Well, at some point you transition. So, like, you're not a farm animal, like a large animal vet
Not at all.
now.
Not at all. And
So, yeah,
yes.
what happened? Like, how did you get into like the small animal realm?
Yeah, yeah. So great question. So basically it started in undergrad, um, when I was looking for things to do. And so going on a farm and like feeding the cows and all that stuff is a lot different than like doing a rectal exam on a cow and
Right, like working
pregnancy
at
check.
a herd of cattle or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I basically um, experienced what it was like to be at a large animal hospital. And I was like, I don't really like this.
Mm.
So it was connected. It was a mixed animal practice. So then I went to the small animal side. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I could do this. I could deal with these animals a little more. Um, and so it basically happened to be that I just like the medicine part for small animals, and even because I work with I don't know if you call them exotics anymore, but definitely not pocket pets. But I work with some exotic animal veterinarians too, and so that transitioned into like more interesting medicine for me. I still like going on a farm,
Yeah.
but not to take care of the animals. It's kind of nostalgic for me,
Right.
and like some of my favorite things are like goats. I love goats. Don't know
Yeah.
why. I just love them. Love small
Sure.
ruminants, and I love chickens still at this point. So that's probably just for my It makes me think about my grandfather.
Yeah.
So but yeah, definitely not doing anything large amount at this point.
Are you gonna ever have a farm? Is that like in your plan?
I'd love to have nothing that's going to be too much, but like I said, the
Sure.
main thing, goats and chickens really are my main. I don't have any interest in like pigs or anything. I don't really want to grow food.
Yeah.
It sounds great, but thinking about the work, you know what I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
that it takes, and maybe something really small. But I'd love to have that. Where I am now in suburbia, I can't have any of that. But
Right.
eventually, I'd like to have a little bit more land and have
Yeah.
those few things.
Yeah.
Would love to.
Yeah, we're thinking about. I mean, we don't have land. Like we are on like a third of an acre,
Hmm, hmm.
but there's like a rule in Fort Collins where I think that you can still have like 5 chickens. And
Oh,
so
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's like enough room in the backyard. Like the yard's like decently sized.
Hmm.
So we're just like, yeah, I mean, we'll put some crops in or whatever. I mean, we'll grow
Yeah.
something here, like maybe throw some
Yeah.
chickens in. Mostly I think it's because like one, like Lindsay's always wanted chickens.
Hmm.
And two, I mean, I kind of want to like pick up an activity while the
Yeah.
baby is there. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like going to be this like perfect time in spring and summer. I'm probably not going to be working a bunch. And I just like,
Yeah.
I've always wanted to
Has
do
something to
it.
do
So
with that. Yeah. No,
yeah.
that's, and it is nice, well, I won't say it's nice because my mom does a lot of that now. She's got like 30 acres
Oh, wow.
out in Ray'sville, and she doesn't do the farming thing, but they do grow their own crops. And let me tell you, going and pick a bunch of, and it's small, but it's still, she's like, oh, let's go pick the peas, or let's
Right.
go do this time for them. I'm like, I do not want to do this. And even when I graduated vet school, I was like, oh, I'm an adult now, I don't have to. I would go straight to my mom. She'd be like, oh, I got to pick these peas. You can come out here and help me. I'm not going to say no.
Right. Exactly.
I'm going to sit
Yeah.
in the house. I just ate that awesome meal you made last night with the
Right.
stuff from your farm. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm going to go out in the heat and pick these freaking peas with all these
Yeah.
all these freaking bugs. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah. Your scale sounds much nicer.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Something
looking
on
at
that
like an
scale.
8 foot by 6 foot area.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you could run through that in 5 minutes. 5 minutes
Exactly.
time. Yeah, and the chickens are just fun to watch. And if you like eggs, it's a good source of protein too.
Yeah, and we
You
do.
know,
I mean, I eat a lot of eggs, so
I do too.
it
Yeah,
might
I
happen.
do too.
Might
Yeah,
happen.
that sounds awesome. That
Exactly.
sounds awesome.
Like it. So in your small animal stuff, at some point you ended up in this special. Unless I'm remembering this incorrectly, but like this hospital that you and I met at.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
worked there like before vet school, didn't you? Weren't
I
you?
did. I did. Yeah. So the way that transpired, it's a pretty cool story. So, well, to me it is. So, I got out of undergrad and I was like, well, I need more experience,
Mm,
because I looking at the application pool, I was like, man, I'm just not going to have enough. So,
right.
I got out and started working for that for a mixed animal practice because I wanted to have that experience portion of it. And that place was toxic, man. Let
Mm,
me tell you, it was toxic. The thing is that I didn't have to work with most people because I was doing nights. It was like this back in the day when they had like an emergency service. Um, but the doctor didn't. One doctor stayed, one went home. She was close enough by, but I was there as the technician, like one tech.
mm,
So I would like answer the phone, run blood work, do treatments on. It was not like
right.
something that you want to do now, but it was good experience for me. But I go into saying this is that, oh man, I was making like $9 an hour. And I knew that was a setup too, because when I applied, I was like, I'm gonna shoot for the moon. Like I think the highest I'd ever made was like $7.50 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm putting nine.
Mm-hmm.
And when they
Yeah.
said, yeah, we can do that, I was like, man, I should have fucking asked for more. What is wrong with me? I really did.
Right.
I rethought
Yeah.
that. But put nine, I started working there. Then I saw this local ad in the newspaper for an emergency technician lead, and
Mm,
I was like, man, I don't know if I'm really qualified to do that. I'd only been working here. I'd put like one IV catheter in,
right.
and a bunch of nursing care. So I was like, well, I got to get out of this place because this place is just, it's not going to pull me in. So I applied. Um, it's so funny, I do the whole application, I send it in, nothing. I was like, well, let me
Right.
give him a call back. So I called, and it was Dr. Jenny Clark. I remember speaking to her. She was an amazing ER doc. But I was like, yeah, I put in my application. She's like, oh yeah, yeah, here. I just haven't had time to call you back. I was like, what? She's like, can you come in tomorrow? I was like, what the hell? Like to like check the place out or whatever else. I was
Yeah.
like, sure.
Yeah.
So I show up. I'm like kind of dressed up. I didn't really know what to wear. Came back there. It was already busy. Like it was a busy ER. And Dr. Clark was kind of like a working interview, but like they were like, "Yeah, can you start tomorrow?" It's really weird. Anyway, it ended
Yeah.
up being to that point, and so I was like, "Yeah, sure." And when they told me the pay, they were like $13 an hour. I was like, what in the
Yeah.
world? I'm about to be rich. So I really did think that too.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
13 an hour. I started calculating. I was like, hell yeah. So I came in, I faked it until I made it. It was one of those things they showed me, but I could learn quick. And so I started there and I was working hard and I was like, all right, this will be perfect because this is a multi-specialty hospital.
Yeah.
I'm in ER, I'm learning doctors. They had internal medicine, all the specialties, most of them, not like cardiology, but they had dermatology at the time when I first started there, behaviorists, everything. I was like, this is going to be fucking great for vet school.
Yeah.
So I did that and I was working there and I was like, okay, vet school's kind of hard to get into. So I was like, I'll, work here. And if I don't get in, I'll just continue to work here because 13 an hour is pretty awesome too.
Sure.
So, I worked there and I started the application process. And that was November of 2004 when I started working there. And I was going to apply to get in for 2005. So I was working there, getting all the experience, getting the doctors, had a few of those doctors sign off on some stuff for vet school. And then, I was applying there. I applied to like 8 veterinary schools, which was expensive as crap.
Yeah.
Even for $13 an hour, that was, man, let me tell you, good thing Mom Dukes came through. She helped me out a little bit on that. But I was applying and I was like, all right, I know I'm probably not going to get in, but at least I'm set up here.
Yeah.
Then I started working on a master's because I was like, well, let me set myself apart from other people,
Sure.
So if I don't get in 2 times, 2 years in, bam, I've got a master's degree.
Yeah.
I can put that on there too.
Yeah.
That way I'm already set apart. So, and I told them going in when I applied, I was like, look, I'm applying to vet school. I said, if I get in, then I'm probably going to go. And they were, oh, that's fine. No worries. So transition to that. And that's where my love for emergency medicine took off because the previous clinic was emergency, but the quality, it just wasn't there for me. Like the doctors were just like, they did stuff differently. I'm trying to be political and nice about it, but it just wasn't, if I'm being honest, I didn't like the way they practiced medicine. It was poor, especially in comparison to where I was now. They were like the surgeries they did. They had a surgical suite, where you had to gown up.
Right.
The other place was like you walk in from one place to the other. You don't put anything on. You're talking into the dog's abdomen, whether without any sort of that. I mean, I'm just saying it's different. It worked for that area, but it was not the type of medicine. And so I was just amazed at that place, and that's really I fell in love with the pace, the case difficulty. I fell in love with, and that's I would oh, let me see this blood work. So that's why I started to connect the biochemistry class I took and well, how are the kidneys working? Oh, these kidney values are elevated.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it takes this much. So that really, and those clinicians were amazing. They if you wanted to learn, they'd be like, oh, this is great. And they had an intern program at the time there too. So they were training interns. I was like, oh my God, these people are getting paid shit. I found out how much they were getting paid and they're kind of loving it. I was like, man, and they were learning, and I talked to some people there and they were like, oh, I learned so much. That's why I'm doing an internship. I was like, shit. I was like, I'm gonna have to do that. So I got set up there, fortunate enough to get a call back. I'll never forget this either. My wife was pregnant at the time, so it was kind of like a little bit of a oops. We got married, and then I was like, well, we're married, so I don't give a shit about. Probably shouldn't do that. If people are going to plan in the future, you probably should plan. So I was like, she was like, she won't. So I started applying to vet school, and I remember it was January. I was still working at CVS with this job. I was applying to vet school, and I started making it into the next phases of some of these schools. I was like, oh shit. I was like, I might get in this year. So I literally having a conversation with them. I was like, look, we're going to start using protection again. I said, because, I'm going to get into vet school and I don't, want to have a baby in vet school if possible.
Yeah.
Fucking too late. It was little did I know. So it's, I'll never fucking forget it because I was saying that. And then a few days later, she was like, yeah, I'm a little late. I was like, oh, it's okay. I mean, you've been late before, me, trying to project it and say that's not, I was like, yeah, there's no way we just had this conversation. It's no way. It's not possible. once again, I like science, but for some reason, I didn't know how that science
Oh,
works.
right.
So, so she comes back and she takes it. I didn't want her to take a pregnancy test. I didn't want her to take one just because I didn't want to know. So,
Right.
but she didn't care. So she went and bought like 3
Mm.
and, and didn't tell me. Plus, they were expensive. Pregnancy tests are expensive as shit.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember she got like one. It was like one little thing. It was like 13 fucking. I was like
That's a whole
$13 for a
hour of my.
pregnancy test, dude. For me they were expensive. I was like,
Yeah.
that is expensive. And she
Yeah.
bought like 3 of them. So she did it, and she comes out and doesn't tell me, and she's holding the test. I'm like, what's going on? I was like,
Yeah.
she's like all red and like excited, and she's like, I'm pregnant, and I was like, I had to like I remember feeling the fear and like everything just bottomed out, and like I was in a black hole when I heard pregnant. I was like,
Right.
but you don't want to be a dick, so I was like,
Right.
yay. Like, how do I respond? I wish I could go back and look at myself.
Yeah.
I know it probably wasn't the greatest response, but
Yeah. Sure.
but she didn't really care. She was happy enough for both of us.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah. And in the end, it was good. And, but I was applying and working at this place, and so
Yeah.
it
You
was
had like
specialty.
you were like setting up all these other things to the point where you're like enrolling in masters so that you can get into this school. And it's just like
Yes,
the biggest thing that can like, push you off on this other
dude.
direction.
Let me tell you, and let me tell you something else too. My mom was not happy. She
Mm.
was not happy. So we went to share the news with my mom
Yeah.
at dinner. This is a little side story. And we sat there. I knew she wasn't going to be happy.
Yeah.
And we were like, we're pregnant. And she just stares. And she's like, tell me you're joking. I was like, what the fuck? She's like, we're like, no, we're married, by the way. We're
Yeah.
married. We're
Yeah.
living together. We're not at home. We're like doing what we need to. We both have jobs. Like,
Right.
we're somewhat successful young adults, not like super successful. We're doing fine.
Yeah.
But she's like, oh no. She's like, what does this mean for vet school? This is what she said.
Wow.
I was like, I'm still going to go to vet school. Like, what do you say?
Yeah.
For her, it just derailed, because she
Yeah.
thought a kid, and she knew kids can be difficult, and you're trying to do all these things. Like, I want you to be successful. So I get where she's coming from. But,
Yeah.
In the end, I got set up, and it all happened for a reason. Like,
Yeah.
I do believe, in I believe in karma, and I believe that there are things that happen for a reason, especially if you do your part, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so went on and found out I got denied pretty quickly from like 3 or 4 of them, like really quick. Like
Yeah.
Virginia Tech in particular was sent me a letter. Like, I think I just applied. It'd been a fucking week, and I got a letter that was tiny. It was literally a week, and it was like like a paragraph.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're not
On
in, dude.
a
I
post-it
was
note.
like, damn. I'm like, I just pay, how much should I pay for this piece of paper?
Right.
So,
God.
but yeah, Virginia Tech and then Ohio State. Oh my gosh, or the Ohio State. They
Mm.
didn't even call me. I was farther in with a bunch of other schools, and
Yeah.
Ohio State. I called them. I was like, did you like what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you didn't get the minimum GRE requirement. I was like, okay. I was like, well, you could have sent me a letter still. I still
Right.
paid you for this little piece of paper to tell me I didn't get in. Like,
Yeah.
just pretty rude about it. It's fine. It all worked out. But
Yeah.
I remember I was at this place that I worked at before, and my wife calls me super excited.
Mm.
She's like, you got a Manila, it used to come in, now you get
Oh,
it like
yeah.
an email or something,
Right.
but it
Right.
came in a big package, and it's from Michigan State, and I'd already interviewed there, and I was like, oh my God. She like brought it up to work for me.
Uh,
And the doctor I was working with, Dr. Wells, so I think you met Dr. Wendy Wells,
yeah.
she was super excited. She's like, open it. So I opened it. It was like my acceptance letter to
That's
Michigan State.
yeah.
And I was super, super stoked. So I didn't go there, but my guy, just for reference, nothing wrong with Michigan State. Don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with Michigan State,
Right.
but I ended up getting into NC State too, and we ended up going there. So,
Yeah.
but, in Tuskegee, but but it was, out of the 8, it was slim pickings, man. But I didn't care.
That's
I got
awesome.
in, but yeah. So I transitioned there, and then went to NC State, and then ended up back at Carolina Veterinary Specialist to
Mm.
do an internship. which was amazing. At the time, it wasn't corporate. Um, and I say that with a little bit of disdain because just a lot of these corporations right now are just not doing a good job for their employees or veterinarians. That's a whole nother golly, that's a whole other topic. But yeah, so went back, did my internship, and then ended up in ER. Just
Yeah.
fell in love with it and had a great support system during the time. So it was fantastic.
Yeah. And so then you stuck around. So you stayed there for a while. Like, how long were you at
Yeah.
that job?
So what I did is did my internship there, and I came back to do my internship there specifically because it was kind of pseudo promised to me that I would have a
Mm,
job.
mm,
That was a terrible time. That was 2008, 2009
right.
when the economy tanked.
Yeah, I remember
And
it
so
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it did. Yeah, it tanked. So I went back there for my internship, was finishing up, and the doctor that was like, yeah, we'll be ready to add like a fourth doctor. I
Right.
was like, great. She changed her tune. She was like,
Yeah, sure.
wait, it makes sense from a
Yeah.
financial standpoint. So I was like, damn, what am I going to do now? Because I had this set up, this ER. Like the doctors were very straightforward with me, like, oh, you can do pretty good. You can
Mm,
make like, $90,000. Like, that's fucking great.
yeah.
So I started reaching out to places. I was like, man, I got to figure out, I got to get a job. I had a
Yeah.
kid, a
Yeah.
3 foot, actually I had two at the time now because we went ahead and had another while I was in vet school. But I was like, man, I can't mess around. I gotta get some income. So I reached out to the sister hospital that was in Winston-Salem. Um, the neurologist there, he was the medical director, Dr. Skeen. I was like, look, I don't know if you got any openings. I was like, I'm looking here. I was going to work at this place, but
Yeah.
and it the way fortunes happen, he was like, oh yeah, we're going to have an opening coming up here pretty soon. I was like, what's an opening? So that's pretty cool. I was like, all right, awesome. So he brings me in for the interview,
Yeah.
and this is in the Winston-Salem, Carolina Veterinary Specialist in Winston-Salem, and it was a really odd interview because he had already checked with the other doctors,
Right.
that were over me in the internship to be like, yeah, he'll be great. He'll be
Yeah.
fine there. He's like, yes, I don't really need to, they told me you'll do fine and stuff. And like, with surgeries, just let me know, we can call someone in, help you out there. But he said, there's a couple things I want to be clear on. He says, if you're mean to the staff, I'm going to let you go. If you're dishonest, I'm gonna let you go. I was like, this is fucking weird. I was like, why is he
Yeah.
saying? Like, is this an interview?
Yeah.
Come to find out, so I get ready to start. No, I do start, and then the one of the doctors was there, and she was working. We were kind of overlapping,
Hmm.
and she was leaving. This doctor was leaving, so that's who I was replacing.
Right.
Well, she was replaced because her contract wasn't renewed.
Hmm.
And so that's because she was doing some things that weren't honest and like were really mean to employees and all this. And now it all made sense. I was like, oh, so he was telling me that because he didn't want to have to deal with that again with
Right.
another employee.
Yeah.
The whole like I'm gonna make sure if I bring you on, you're not gonna be this person. So
Yeah.
I replaced them, but long and short, I stayed there for 4 years. But then I eventually switched over to the Greensboro facility, and which was good. And I was there for another 4 years, and then ER was starting to take its toll on me. I was like, man, I'm getting tired. Like
Yeah.
my kids are getting older. I'm missing a lot of stuff. I was like, I think I'm gonna go into day practice. I didn't want to go into day practice to do day practice. I wanted
Right.
to own a place, and I was like, well, if I'm a business owner, then for me, I know that I'll have more. That'll be more interesting to me because
Yeah.
for me, I don't just want to do what's entailed in the everyday. I like the tough cases. And I was like, well,
Right.
what can transition to that? So, oh my goodness, oh my gosh. So oh god, a little bit of this. I go into this place, so I get offered this kind of position where the guy's like, "Oh yeah, you can buy this place. Like I'm ready to get rid of it." I was
Oh,
like, "Okay."
yeah.
And so in ER at that time, I was doing like really well, making
Mhm.
really good money. And I said, well, I said, here's the deal. I said, I can come in and I can just buy the place, or I can, be 50-50 or something like that. I said, but I don't think you can afford me as an ER doctor at this point,
Right.
and I have to maintain a certain standard of living. So he was, oh yeah, yeah, we can talk about that. And so just full disclosure, at the time I was making about $180,000 as an ER doctor,
Mm.
which is pretty good. I was like, that I can do
Yeah.
that. I remember having a meeting with him, and 80 came out of his mouth, and I didn't even process. I was like, oh, 80, like the base, or like, and I just kept on going, and then I stopped him. I was like, whoa. $80,000 a year?
Right.
He's like, yeah, no benefits. Like, there's no benefits here or nothing else like that. I literally said to him, I shook my eyes. I said, that's not going to work. I said, that's not going to work. I said,
Yeah.
here's the deal. I said, I can come in and I can work part time for you. I can still do my ER. He's like, no. I need you. We can work something out. We can do. I was like, all right, minimal off my calculation, you got to do 140, which is kind of high to be paid as an associate. But
Yeah.
if you don't ask for it, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
So I think we settled somewhere on 120. I came out. I was gung ho. I was doing the stuff. Transition never happened because I think he just wanted to do the whole back, like get you in the door, didn't think you're going to
Right.
stay there.
Yeah.
And anyway, that ended up not working out for the best, but I was only there for like 3 months because we agreed on 120. Maybe he thinks I can't do basic math. I was calculating. It was weird, like the way the pay period was. And I was like, this only equates to 110 a year.
Right.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
literally went to him. I was like, you owe me some money,
Right.
and he made it up the next time, but I'm like, what's going, and we didn't sign anything, which is good too, but it just wasn't working out. And
Yeah,
so I
sure.
was like, cause I had my guys ready, like, you got to get a team together. You got to spend
Yeah.
some money. They got to
Yeah.
evaluate the practice. And he probably just didn't have his shit together, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't say that for sure, but he probably didn't have his shit together. So because he never would cut, he'd always delay it. And I would even bring it up like, this is a business transaction, dude. So after that, I gave him a notice. I did an official notice. I put it to him. This is a warning for people if you're going to buy stuff. I hear this story all the time about people trying to transition something, but it didn't work out. He's pretty emotional. Like, this is a
Yeah.
business transaction during it when I was leaving. But anyway, I left there and went to a place called Thrive, which is now Vetco. That basically PetSmart, that's
Right.
Petco's version of like
Right.
Banfield.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let me just tell you that the
Yeah.
exam fee was $10.
Wow. Wow.
This was November of 2019, I believe.
Dang.
Right around, no, 2018. I'm sorry. November of 2018.
Yeah.
The exam fee was $10. So immediately I was like, oh my fucking God, the things I'm going to get in here.
Right.
And people are going to, people already think the exam fee includes a bunch of stuff. So $10,
Right.
the number of flea allergic dermatitis I saw
Sure.
was ridiculous. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. Folks can go and buy a Seresto collar. You can get Frontline over the counter. So for me, that was a point of depression in my life, and I'm not even joking. Like, I became depressed because I couldn't practice medicine the way I wanted to,
Yeah.
and so it was really difficult for me to go to work every day. And I'm not saying anything about veterinarians that do this. Like, it's not lesser for them. And there's some practices where you can work up cases, and you can treat heart disease, you can do all those things. But this place was pretty basic,
Right. Right.
and so people couldn't afford that came to do that stuff, and so. It's fine, and it was an 8 to 5, and I got out on time every time. I got to spend some stuff, but it just wasn't fulfilling for me.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what can I do to be fulfilling? Because it's practicing this. So I bought an ultrasound. Stupid. I was like, well, let me do this. So I started that, and I'm still doing that. I started a mobile ultrasound business, and bought that, and it was good from there. But then during all this, Word's Carolina veterinary specialist, the medical director in Winston, got word that, it didn't work out with me buying that practice. And so started hounding me. They were like, yeah, why don't you come be medical director at Greensboro?
Right.
Look, let me tell you, the Greensboro at that time was totally different than when I went there for my internship and when I worked there even the years before. And I'd gotten word, it's a small community in the veterinary community. When you're in a certain area, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And to say the least, the place was a shit show. Really bad. Like, And to the point, and I think that's when you started working there a little bit and how
Yeah.
we came across each other.
Yeah.
So I think you experienced some of this stuff. And so it was basically all relief ER doctors at the time, no accountability.
Mm.
So, you can have relief veterinarians coming in. That's not the problem. There has to be some form of accountability. None.
Right.
Probably half of them shouldn't be doing ER because people think emergency medicine is easy, and it's not. And
Right.
especially nowadays, they see dollar signs and they're like, "Oh, I can do that." No, you probably should
Right.
hone in your skills a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
just being honest.
Yeah, and there's
Um,
no way for like the hospital to like vet you really.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's
Not at
just like,
all.
oh, you're willing to do the shift? All right, well.
All right, put them on, and that's
Yeah.
literally what they did.
Yeah.
So I came in and I was like, man, I'm just going to give them some crazy, what I thought was a crazy number, and they're going to say no.
Right.
And, you're going to just pay me salary, which we know, nowadays it's production based unless you're on your own or something else like that.
Sure.
Most places
Sure.
are production based. But I was like, I'm not going to deal with running a hospital and being on production. It's no way.
Yeah.
So, they agreed to my terms, and I'll never forget because I got off the call and I was like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
That place is worse than I thought. They are that desperate. They're going to agree to this number."
Yeah.
And me not being any production because I was going to basically be medical director, ER director, and I was still going to be an emergency clinician too. So I was
Mm.
going to have to work shifts.
Yeah.
So Oh, I told my wife, I was like, I'm not doing it. I was like, fuck this. I was like, I can do something
Yeah.
else. I was like,
Yeah.
because I just got a bad feeling. I was like, this can't be good.
Right.
But I ended up going back there. I was focused.
What?
We made a
Why did
lot of
you decide
changes.
yes? Like, why did you have to do it?
My wife told me I was crazy not to do it. If I'm gonna be 100% honest, for the
Let me
money,
bring out
she
the
was like,
bills. Let me show you.
yeah. She's like, are you? She's like, are you fucking serious? She's like, you could do anything. Like, she was like, I was like,
Yeah.
baby, you don't understand, and she doesn't. But I don't blame her for that. But so I thought about it, and I was like, if I hate it, then I don't have to stay there. I was like,
Sure.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So I was like, anything. So literally, I told him in the thing, I was like, this is a 24-month contract. I told them that I was like, we're not going any further than that. We got to see how things work out on both ends. I said,
Yeah.
I had aspirations of being part owner. I said, you got to come offering me something where I can be part
Mm.
owner at some point.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed all that stuff, and
Yeah.
they were on board with it at the time. So come in, and man, let me tell you, I need a lot of cleanup. But mostly it was just doctors. You just needed doctors. So
Right.
I just started meeting them, including you, other people that I'm pretty sure offered you a job. I'm pretty sure. I know at some point I brought it up, but then I realized you were traveling, and
Right.
after talking to you a little bit, you're like, "Nah, I'm not doing that." So, which
Right.
is cool. It's definitely respectable. So, but that's basically what I did. I found the best ones, ER doctors. I started offering them jobs, and then there's a couple people I knew before because it was a small enough community. I was like, "Well, you want to go do ER?" I was like, "Come
Mm.
check it out. Come do a couple shifts." And I think within that time frame, in a 2-year period, I hired 5 ER doctors, an internist, a surgeon, and yeah, I became a recruiter too for them.
Yeah. It
By
seems
the
like it.
way, they have
Yeah.
a recruitment, but I go over the contract and everything. I'm like, what the fuck is this? But
Yeah.
anyway, that's
Yeah.
that's another story. So, but yeah, and I enjoyed it, but it was nonstop work. Like
Yeah.
as a medical director, you should just be directing like standards of a practice. I was doing way more than that.
Mm.
It was too much, honestly.
Mm.
So I kind of like lost myself. I was like, dude, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
this is not worth it. Like, and I couldn't even think of a price for that to be worth it. What I was doing,
Yeah.
you know? So, and then the pandemic hit. Oh my God,
Mm.
the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic hit. I vividly remember like March when they were like stay at home or whatever, and people were staying at home, and I was
Yeah.
going to fucking work,
Mm-hmm.
because we were
Yeah.
essential. I
Yeah.
remember that, so I was driving to work, and I was like, oh man, people are gonna lose their jobs. I was like, I might lose my job. I was thinking in my head like, what am I gonna do? Because that's the thing when the economy tanks and you have a fucking pandemic. So I go in, and at first it was just really quiet. At first, it wasn't too much, and then because we were essential, Everyone wanted to get a pet.
Yeah.
It fucking exploded. It's like a shit bomb just went off. It was, it was everywhere. I was like, what is going on right now? So
Yeah.
that's what happened. And so
Yeah, like a couple
stress
months in.
load,
Jeez.
dude, it was a couple months and it was
Yeah.
crazy. And,
Yeah.
most people from a financial standpoint be like, this is great, but it was too much. The bearings had fallen off and the whole veterinary field, which is still in crisis, in my opinion,
Yeah.
still in crisis. But it was a time where it was just really bad. It was good, but it was bad. But then I started seeing patients that couldn't get care, that were dying, and I was like, I got to find happiness again,
Yeah.
And I had doctors that were leaving, I had staff leaving, and I was doing all I could to try and maintain them, but I couldn't. And the corporation, this is why I talk about corporations, wasn't responding. I literally called the top guy that's the top owner. He's not a veterinarian, but
Right.
he's the guy that owns, this company, and it fell on deaf ears.
Yeah.
It's like, I would make suggestions and stuff, and I was like, well, if you don't care, then I'm not going to care for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I care. You only can care so
Yeah.
much. You only can
Yeah.
care so much. And it's like having another child. It was literally like, I was like, well, I've got to let this go because this is not my kid. And I'll help out if you want to, but they just didn't care. It fell into it. So I was like, I put in my notice. I was like, I did not renew after 24. And it was funny the way that it ended. I was like, I'm going to finish this 24 months out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got wisdom, especially from people like you, on, well, what can you do?
Right.
What are some options? Because I'd only ever been employed
Right.
by someone else, and so I was like, well, let me set it up and do it on my own. I'd always done relief at different places, so I was always a 1099 ever since I had my, like, even when I was an intern, like
Mm-hmm.
I worked at places and they would send me a 1099. So I always knew about the relief world. It was just like, this is not stable enough,
Right.
was my thought.
Yeah.
And so I had some other people doing it and I still had apprehensions. I was like, man, I'm not going to be able to pay the bills. What if there's not this? But it literally was the best decision
Right.
I've made at this point.
Huh.
And I don't know, with where we are right now in the vet field, if that will change anytime soon. It's
Interesting.
but it allowed me. I go into work and I have a whole different set. Like, I enjoy it again. It's weird. It's still tiring. You still get tired of the bullshit with mostly owners, and then techs like to bicker a little bit.
Right.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
Like, don't just fucking work. You know what I mean? Like, we can talk a little bit, but just do your fucking job. Like, I'm not trying to sound bad. I'm just being honest. Like,
Right.
and so, but it's allowed me to be fulfilled again. Like, it really has. It's taken me back to, like, when I first finished and I was gung ho, you know. But the problem is that burnout is real in this field.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're at a point where most people are managing their burnout.
Right. Yeah.
They're managing it, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So now we have to figure out, how do we make this better? You can't just talk a good game. Like, that's why the veterinary field, I'm not going to say it's broken, because there's still a lot of good people out there. There are people that are figuring it out, but we're in a transition phase, man.
Yeah.
And corporations, for the most part right now, aren't figuring it out. The places I'm seeing that are on it are places that are being run by people that are on the ground and that understand how it
Right.
functions.
Yeah.
Corporations don't get it. They got to stop this shit, because it's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
And they're going to find themselves paying a lot of money and
Yeah.
losing money at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you have to buy the businesses first off, which are not cheap. And then you have to pay all these people. And then, to not really invest in it in the, I don't know, the ways that'll keep it running after all that. Yeah, sure. Then the businesses will start tanking.
Yep.
I'm curious about, God, there's so many like follow-ups. On
Sorry.
No. It's just so interesting. I'm like, so on that part of it, I suppose, just to touch on the corporate part of it, is like, I guess being that close to it, right? Like since you were like literally,
Hmm.
you're like knocking on the
Yeah.
ceiling, like, hey, like, can't you hear what's going on down here?
Yeah.
Um, did you get any sense as to why it felt like it was falling on deaf ears? Like, what were the priorities?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've got, once again, people may think this is opinion based. I don't think it's opinion based at all. Um, so a couple things. It's a little bit multifactorial, but one of the main things is that veterinarians that are practicing don't own these private entities. Okay,
Right.
that's huge. That's huge. Like I can't say enough about that. The people that get it are the people that are doing it. You can't, like, I'll give you an example. I was just talking to a guy of a potential place I'm going to work in Florida. He still owns his practice. He's a fucking great guy. Um, and he told me that this German private equity firm, you may be a little bit aware of this, but for those that aren't, I think they have like maybe 80 billion in total, decided they wanted to get into the veterinary industry
Mm.
because it's so profitable. None of them are veterinarians.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
They bought NBA, and I think it's another one they bought up too. They're now the second largest behind Mars.
Hmm.
People aren't familiar with Mars. That's Banfield, right? And so think
Yeah.
about that. You've
Yeah.
got a private equity firm that's buying veterinary practices.
Hmm.
How is that going to be successful for our patients, for the veterinarians, for the veterinary staff, for the clients?
Right.
It's a fucking shit show. You cannot, that does not equate to a successful veterinary business model. It just doesn't. And here's the bottom line. So that's the blame. You don't have the veterinarians. The bottom line is that if we go to what we were taught, okay, practicing good medicine, right? If you practice good medicine, the dollars will follow. You don't even have to do anything outside of that. You can have a good
Right.
business sense, right?
Right.
Let's say on like make sure your employees are well compensated, things like that. But how can you get back to the employees? Well, let's create a profit sharing or bonus. That's easy shit.
Right.
If you practice the medicine, the money will come.
Right.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And they don't care about that. So my sense is that you try and give them things. For example, I'll give you another example. I went to him. One of my complaints. We complained every fucking doctor's meeting. We wrote letters. I can't tell you that all the doctors were on board, and we sent it to corporate, to the person that's supposed to be it, not a veterinarian, never been in the vet field. Period.
Right.
Outside of owning a practice, we said you need to pay our staff more, and we give a specific amount. We even wanted to do profit sharing with them. We gave them solutions. You can take a portion of our salary, and
Right.
we'll give it to them.
Yeah.
You greedy fuck. Like that's what we're willing to do. I'm sorry. It really
Right.
it really starts to irk me. And so we told them that you need to do that, and we explained, we made it simple math. We said, okay, this experience has been here for 10 years. They do anesthesia. They can bring in 2 and 3 cases. They get the history. They can get this IV catheter going. You can see 4 patients. You can have 4 patients come in, the doctor can see, and and uh and get everything done in an hour and a half, 2 hours with this one technician. This new
Yeah.
tech that you're hiring, if you have them there, you're going to see those 4 cases are going to take you 4.5 to 5 hours, and they
Yeah.
still may make mistakes. That then, so we equate it to retention. If you retain this great staff that's been here for 10 years plus, you pay them a little more,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll be good. And a little more is not pennies. We're not talking about, they would do ridiculous shit like, oh, I'm gonna give you a 56-cent raise.
Right. Yeah.
Are you fucking
Yeah.
serious?
That's the raise that I got when I worked at the movie theater when I was in high school.
That, exactly.
Yeah.
That I was at a pet shop and they gave me 36. I was excited.
Yeah.
But that's not what you do with these
Right.
professionals.
Yeah.
So, that's my thing is that these corporations, if they're going to do it well, they need to have veterinarians at the top. None of them are going to do that because they're private equity firms and they're looking at spreadsheets. I'm not trying to simplify it, but that's the truth,
Yeah.
and they're not even listening to like the vets out there now telling you how to do it.
Right.
You'll make the
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. I presume that it's, I mean, I think it does come down to spreadsheets. And I guess I don't know. I mean, this comes from a point of speculation, not knowledge. But,
Hmm.
when you're thinking about a business, like you're thinking about profit margins and,
Hmm.
profit margins come from a lot of different places. It doesn't necessarily
Hmm.
matter how the people are doing on the the floor. I mean, all the things
You're
that
exactly right.
we're talking about like retention and people, staying in the industry and enjoying their
Hmm.
job and, therefore we can provide better medicine. But like at the end of the day, that shows up on a balance sheet in a different way. Um,
Yeah.
like retention, yeah, like now we're not training people over and over again. Like there's a cost to, like you're saying, like a more experienced person can see it can like help in such a way that then allows us to see more cases and then that'll bring more money in. And so that
Hmm.
allows for
Hmm.
like more revenue. But like, yeah, there's like the cost cutting version of that too, which is like, let's just be as bare boned as possible, charge as
Yep.
much as we can to the few people who are willing to pay it. And then like that also provides revenue.
Yep.
Um, but what that
Yep.
misses, in my opinion, I mean, this is again just an opinion, but like what that misses is that like this is still a profession of passion. It's still a,
Hmm.
people come into it not because we're expecting to make, $1 million a year salary or anything like that.
Hmm.
So we're not going
Hmm.
to be on board with that. Like there's only a certain point where that we're willing to go with you to help you kind of
Yeah.
make those profits.
It's
So,
true. It's true.
yeah.
It's 100% true. And that's where it lacks. But that's fine with the spreadsheets. Even if you create a panel that you actually listen to what they're saying, you don't even have to have them up there up top.
Right.
This is the reality, right? If you're a car maker, right, and you got blueprints to a car, right, doesn't mean you can fucking make a car. You get. I'll simplify. That's what we're doing, but that's what they're equating it to, you know?
Yeah.
And I think some of this probably comes from the human side. I think a
Yeah.
little bit comes from the
I'm
human
sure.
side because they're buying up big, big money in in the human health side.
Yeah.
Yeah, the difference is they have insurance companies that can
Right.
offset some of the costs for the clients, and so the doctors go and they do their job and they don't give a shit. It's
Right.
like I get to do my job, I get to practice medicine.
Yeah.
They don't. The companies are making such huge profit margins. People don't think they are, but they're making huge profit margins
Right.
that they don't give a shit. It's like
Right.
whatever. It's working. And now they're trying to transition that into veterinary medicine. And the problem is that people aren't getting insurance for their pets.
Mm-hmm.
Pets are. I'd say they're really a luxury at this point, and so they're kind of like your Starbucks, right? It's like, oh, I want to go get this latte, right?
Right.
That's fine if you got discretionary income. The pet care industry, as big as it is still based on discretionary income.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have extra of that,
Right.
you're not going to be able to afford to do that $4,000 or $5,000,
Yeah.
abdominal explorer, which is sad. We don't want to have to think about that.
Right.
But then you got vets from the other side. We've got student loans. We want to live a life.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to we become compassion fatigue because we care, but we got to deal with everyone else's fucking problems, so
Yeah.
we can't enjoy life.
Right.
It's really sad. And so for me, and this is probably a bigger topic, the veterinary profession. As veterinarians, we got to start focusing on ourselves.
Right.
And this is going to sound bad. I care about Fido, but when you leave work, you fucking leave work.
Yeah.
I made it a priority now. I don't take anything home with me. I don't take anything. I used to have access to log in and, oh, let me
Mm-hmm.
finish this record at home. Let me do
Right.
this. Let me follow up this client, block my. Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
It's okay to work while you're there, even if you got to stay a few hours, but take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. The rest will follow. And that's why we have a problem with suicide too. All of that. We've got to learn to separate a little bit, but to get back to enjoying our job. And these corporations aren't making it easier. I'm just going to say that. They're not making it easier.
Right. At CVS, like, how do you feel like? I mean, that job of medical director, ER director, like clinician, all that. That sounds all consuming. But like, you
Yeah.
still have, you have a family. Like, you have a life outside of
Yes.
that. Like, were you able to maintain any sort of balance during that time?
My balance during that time was drinking.
Hmm.
It sounds terrible. It was drinking. I am a person that can self reflect, and I think some of the things people are afraid to say hold them back. right? I
Yeah.
like to learn for my stuff. And
Yeah.
during that time, I self-medicated, man. And I didn't realize it as much until I pulled myself away from that. And
Mm.
it's been 100% different. I mean, it was just, and I even, they even approached me again, like not that long ago, about trying to come back or something like that. And I literally told him, I was like, look, I'm not going to drink myself into the ground. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not going to, and who knows what that would transition into. So
Right.
for me, it was not a balance. It
Yeah.
was not it. What I look like if I'm, and it wasn't like I wasn't like drunk beating my kids or whatever
Sure.
else.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
but it was excessive drinking.
Yeah.
Okay. We all have our demons. We all have stuff we go through. Everyone has their niches and stuff. But for me, that was the way I managed it. And it wasn't a good way to manage, because what I felt like it was just a revolving wheel and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
What is that? I've never had that in my life. Even
Yeah.
even when I didn't do well in undergrad, oh, if I try, then I can do something.
Right.
Oh, I didn't do this. It's all about, progress. And I felt like it was a dead end for me. It was not going. And yeah, could I have just taken a check and cut back and did stuff? That's not who I am as a person. This goes back to the passion, being honest. Us as veterinarians, why we get in this field? We don't get in this field for that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't. You know.
Yeah.
So it makes it's just not a good combination. I think they can do better. Even you don't even have to listen. Just do what someone tells you within reason, and you still can kind of follow the balance sheet. So we can say, "Oh, we can't do that because that's too much," but we can try this. We
Right.
can compromise and do this.
Sure.
It doesn't. No one's asking you to roll over
Yeah.
and for whatever. And you can even give a time frame, 6 months. If you do it my way, watch your profits then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe not 6 months. That's probably not enough time. But you get what I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
saying. Like,
Yeah.
let's give it time. We can re-review this. I'm not telling you to do anything crazy. In the end, it's going to be more profitable.
So from that side, I mean, as somebody who, you have like the ultrasound business, which I'll say, right? I mean, there's the mobile
Hmm.
ultrasound business. There's
Yeah.
like the relief stuff that you're doing now. You've played with the idea of owning a day practice. I mean, as somebody within the community that has the ability maybe to do it, why not start a business yourself?
Yeah. It's a great question, and I struggle with it. I struggle with it because I know my previous past with the drinking. I
Yeah.
struggle with it because I don't want to take away from my kids. Really, that's number one
Yeah.
for me. Kids, wife, family time.
Right.
You can't, and I don't care who you are. For me, that trumps any dollar sign. That trumps even being able to get back to the community at this point. And it could change. It could change for me. My kids could go, and I go back to those college days where I feel like I have all the time in the world. Right now, I just don't. I just don't see that. And I'm gonna be honest. As you get older, you start seeing. If I think about it, I'm gonna be honest. I've spent half my time on this earth right now, if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Right, that time has flown by. We're not promised tomorrow. So I'd love to be able to do that. I think it would be fantastic. I think I could create an awesome team and give back. I just don't know if I have the energy to do that, along with giving the rest of my energy to like my family and others. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So that's the tough part.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's needed. I think it's needed, and I love to do it, but I'm fearful that it would be too much for me.
I completely understand that. I'm
Yeah.
exactly at that moment in my life where I'm like,
Hmm.
well, I have all of these, ideas, business ideas and whatever. I think that I see because I've had the luxury of going into all these places, I have a pretty decent idea of what I feel works or jives with my own sensibility and what I think the profession could benefit from and all that. But
Yeah.
it's like, how much of my own life am I going to sacrifice for the profession?
Yeah.
Like, because that's what you're doing, right? Like, you're sort of
Yeah.
saying, I'm doing this so that, because it's not about the money, right? Like, at some point, you could be happy on, whatever amount.
Yep.
I feel like I have the same amount of money as I did when I was 20.
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Trust me, you find things. It doesn't matter how much you make. You find the thing to spend it on. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So like there's, that's if that could go on forever, you can make millions of
Yeah.
dollars and I'm sure that I would feel the exact same way.
Exactly. Exactly. I
So it's
agree.
not, yeah. So it's not that. It's like literally I would do it because of either professional curiosity, but really because I'm like, I think that this is a good idea. I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
And so you're weighing that, like, is the necessary idea, or at least what I believe is necessary for the industry, worth the time that's going to take away from my family?
Yeah.
And with like a little guy on the way in like a month and a half,
Yeah.
whatever, it's like,
Yeah.
this is an imminent thing that I'm trying to figure out. So
Yeah. No,
totally understand
it's
it.
tough. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. The family thing is it's tough, but it is. It is a rewarding profession. But it could be so much more. Especially with the model that's happening now. Um, but I think I say that to say this, that I think we still got time. I think there's got to be a lot of changes. Um, but we can do it. We eventually something's going to give.
Yeah.
Eventually something's going to give. So
Yeah.
I just don't know when and how that's going to transition. For
Yeah.
for us as a profession.
Yeah. At this point in your career, like given the kind of professional freedom maybe or flexibility that you have, like where are you finding, like you touched on it before, like
Hmm.
you're engaged now, like it's kind of back to when you were, inspired by the profession earlier, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um like what do you think, I guess, how do you find like the joys in this again? Like how do you reconnect to like the passion that you once had in this
Yeah,
profession now?
yeah. It's the thing that I would think that would help me the least. Actually, helps me the most, and it's the people. Even though I'm not really a people person, and when I say the people, I mean the clients.
Hmm.
It's those clients that I find they care about their. I mean, it's just a different. They care about their animals so much. They listen to you. They thank you for what you've done.
Yeah.
Or what you're doing. That's where I'm kind of finding, because then I come back and it's like we all like a little bit of gratitude though, but we want to feel like we're actually doing something good. And it's those cases where, it's like, you're doing what you need to do. You're doing fantastic. And this animal survived. You know what I mean? Those are the cases where I'm really finding uh, my joy
It's
again.
I could definitely see that. It's like you're actually tangibly providing the service to these people. And you're absolutely right. Like, especially in ER. And I feel like that there's like this gratitude that happens because of like the expectation that set when they walk in, right? Like you're here
Yeah,
because this is the most horrific thing, like the worst day of your life. And then you
yeah,
leave ideally with a good outcome or at least a plan. And yeah, I mean, there's some gratitude that happens in the middle there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think that's it, because the animals, they don't know. And
right.
of course, some of them show gratitude, or, wagging their tail, or they're just super sweet, or whatever else. We all have those cases that come in that you just kind of fall in love with just because
Yeah,
the
sure.
the
Yeah.
animal's so nice. But I
Yeah.
really, like I said, it's not that I hate the people, but people are pretty annoying. But that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm finding that I actually somewhat enjoy, especially since, like, COVID kind of changed it, because initially, we were all on the phone. I thought that was like the greatest thing. It's like, man, I
Right.
can be so much more productive. I don't actually have to meet with them. But
Right.
since we start transitioning back into seeing folks in the room, I'd be like, oh man, this is, the thing I thought I didn't like it. Like, this is kind of nice in a
Yeah.
weird way,
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I feel like it's less load on me, but in a weird way, it's been much nicer
I
to
actually
to actually
totally
have that.
agree. Yeah, I
Yeah,
felt the exact same way. I was like, man, I'm
yeah,
so glad. And I am somebody who likes talking to people.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
absolutely, once we had the ability to do the phone, I'm like, God, I can actually like type in the history while we're
yes,
talking about it. I don't have to
yeah,
think about it later. All that
yeah.
stuff. I'm so much more productive. But yeah, now that we're back in the rooms a little bit, I'm like, oh yeah, look at these
It's kind of
faces.
nice. Yeah, yeah. And like, actually, I was kind of like sad one time. Like, I went to go get a client. Like, I went out in the front. I was like, "Yeah, can you come in?" They was like, "Oh, they left to go do the thing." I was like, "Oh, then I have to call them on the phone." It was weird for me to be. You can ask my wife. I will complain in a heartbeat about a client that gets on
Yeah.
my nerves. But it was weird. I mean, it's one of those things that's like, oh man, I think it's just the whole scope of things are like kind of bringing it back. You never really
Yeah.
think about it until it's not there, and then you're like, oh man, I did appreciate that a lot more than what I realized.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then what about your family? I mean, like, or I guess the rest of your life, now that
hmm
you're kind of on this side of that realization,
hmm
like, how do you
hmm
find your balance there?
Oh man. So
I'm looking for
the
wisdom. I just need some advice. That's no,
no,
I'm kidding.
no, no, you got it. Once again, imperfect parenting is the best, but what I'm finding is that what I'm finding, if I look at all the years that I've done this, is that partnership is fantastic. You know, you got to have a partner. You should that's not hindering you. That's going to be help you be successful. Okay.
Yeah.
That time, the time is the main thing. Even moments you don't think are important. And I'm not talking about, oh, I went to my kid's baseball game. I did this. Like it could be as simple now for me as I'm driving in the car with my kid and I'm having a quick conversation with them, or like we're sitting down together as a family and eating dinner. Like the simple things, not even the ones where you make time to say, "Oh, let's go on vacation and do the stuff." It's that time, and actually, my kids let me know that I didn't do so bad as a dad so far at this point. Like where they will bring stuff up, like my son. It was interesting to hear because you never hear these things. They just say them,
Yeah.
we were something about coaching. I was like, I could probably help coaching, your team for soccer. I played soccer, and I was telling Cohen that or whatever else, and my wife was like, no, you don't have time for that or something like that. And Cohen didn't even, or someone didn't even like it when you were that coach. And then my son spoke up. He's like, I liked it when Dad was our coach. I was like, oh, it's those little things. Look, I'm not a super soft guy, but those little things really touch my heart. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, it's like, it's the simple things are like time. And for us, like, I still can remember, especially when they're really young, because I'm going to be honest, 0 to 6 months of age, boring. Like, the
Mm.
kids, freaking babies are boring to me,
Yeah.
including my own children. They're pretty
Right.
boring. I mean, they did some stuff, but once they hit like 3 months, they at least look at you,
Mm.
or whatever else.
Yeah.
But even just something that's like, I remember it was my thing to like bathe the kids. Like I would get home from vet school. I'm sure my wife was ready to do the handoff, because
Yeah,
she had the
sure.
kid all day,
Yeah.
and I would like it was bath time, and I think back like sometimes it's just so tired. I was like, man, I just wish my wife, but I did it because of that partnership. I was like, she needs the time too. But now I think back, I'm like, dude, that was time I spent like even just a bath.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
routine of it all was just like, and I look back at pictures now when they're in there, I'm like, that makes me feel so good. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And I know, and the thing I know now is that they know that they remember that stuff. They pick up on it, and that's what makes a good parent. Not even the bad stuff like, oh, you brought a bad grade in, or you should, you were being rude to that person. Like they don't even pick up on that stuff or remember that as much as when you make those meaningful moments. And it could
Yeah.
be any moment. It doesn't even ones you don't think is meaningful. So that's for me, and I don't know if I really actually even answered your question, but I'm just kind of nostalgic about like thinking about when my kids were younger and they're older now, and
Yeah.
it's you know, it's good. So for my advice to you, and I think you're already doing a fantastic job of it, is to slow down and make sure you enjoy that time with your child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even the stuff that it doesn't seem like it's something that like making food for them, just seems like a chore or task, or changing a diaper. Like that was one of my routines. Like my wife would like nudge me because I'm a hard sleeper. Like when the kid would get up, I could change a diaper like a pro. I'm telling you, like I could be half sleep changing a diaper, dude. I'd turn a little light on, put her in a beanie, do the
Yeah.
thing, flip
Yeah.
real quick, boom, get her
Yeah.
back in the bed, and I was back to sleep. And I was a freaking pro. But all of those, all of those little nuances
Yeah.
make a difference, man.
Yeah.
They make a difference.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know if it did answer the question now that I'm thinking about it, but
I
man,
don't think
I
so.
love
I
the
don't think
answer.
so. Yeah.
I'll definitely take it.
Yeah.
There is like this article that I've been like trying to think of because you keep bringing up these ideas of like just savoring these little moments. I just saw, there's a term for it. I just saw an article about it. But it's like, it's, I don't know, emotional snacking or something like that, where it's like, yeah, you just, the routine things, just like take a second and appreciate the thing itself. So it could be just, making dinner, and like things that then become chores can actually turn into like amazing memories, like exactly what you're talking about it. And you keep touching on it. And I was reading that article. I'm like, that's a really, it's a really wise idea. And it's like, well, you already have that wisdom.
I don't know. It's once again, it's with age. That's where wisdom is, right? The experiences, and so I think you're going to be fine because your infectious personality, and you're a solid partner. I know that. Look, I don't know your day to days, but I've seen your interactions with Lindsay, even on like shifts, and the way he comes, y'all going to be good. You're going to be good. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's not without, I mean, all that stuff is, of course, I'm not going to, not work. I mean, effort, right? Like intention. You do that stuff. It doesn't necessarily come naturally or whatever, but.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's that goes back to the first thing that you were talking about, right? Like where you have to make mistakes and, like own up to those mistakes and talk about it and then sort of adjust from there. And like a good relationship, a good partnership in any sense is sort of figured out along the way. Yeah. And I'm really lucky that, Lindsay, I think is, feels the same way and is also one that, intentionally works towards it. So yeah, it's good, man. Thank you so much. This is
no worries.
This was awesome.
Yeah. Sorry it took me forever I was literally sitting staring at the lake. Like, when is he gonna come up? That's why I texted you. I was like, what is he doing here, man? I thought we said. Then I was like, oh, it's me, of course.
That's
get on there, you're like waiting. I'm sorry. I apologize about that. I was literally clicked on the link, like waiting. I was like, what is going on? Yeah,
that's
technology. Oh man.
And this platform is also like a little bit of a pain, but like the recordings that come out I think are pretty good, so it's like
no, I listened to your last one.
Oh, sweet. Nice.
It was good with I think it's your most recent with the Criticalist. I met her. I worked
Donahue.
with her. With Donahue. That's it. Yeah. That was pretty cool. I like it. Can you get all of them? I know this is off topic, but can you get all of them on?
Yeah.
Do you have them all up? Okay.
Yeah, they're all up on. I'll just plug them right now. Find the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Yeah. I mean, they're all up on. They're all on Spotify and Apple, and
nice. Okay.
Yeah, and I actually just put them all up. I just created a website which took like way too long.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the greatestprofession.com also has.
Awesome. I'm gonna go listen. It's been great. I'm glad we got to do this. It's been great.
Yeah, man. No, I definitely appreciate it.
Keep it going, man. Keep it going. It's needed.
I will.
It's a great form of therapy. Seriously, I'm being serious.
Good.
Yeah. Find myself just listening to him like, oh man, this is nice.
I appreciate that. All right. And that is my conversation with TJ Muse. TJ was actually one of the first people, I think the first person who I wanted to get on the podcast. I met him a long while back when we were doing work at that hospital in the middle of North Carolina. And I just remember him saying sort of at the time that he was having difficulty motivating himself to stay in that gig because of his frustrations with corporate and because of kind of how they were treating the support staff. And I just thought that plus, his journey into medicine and the fact that he was now medical director at a place that he used to tech for, I thought that was really cool. I mean, what a cool story that is. So I actually really wanted to get him on super early. But when I started this, he was starting his journey in relief medicine, and so he was kind of caught up in that whole accepting all the gigs all over the place and not knowing what your schedule is and trying to jam pack everything in. So we just couldn't get our schedules to align. But as it turns out, it's actually, maybe serendipitous, because if we had spoken back then, I wouldn't have been able to talk to him about any of the stuff with respect to family. At least not with the perspective that I sort of had when I was having this conversation. And we wouldn't have known that we were having a kid at that point. Because he has a perspective looking back in the building of the career, as well as in parallel, the building of the family. It sort of happened all at the same time. Went to vet school, had the first kid, was building that family while building his knowledge and building a career, doing his internship, and then getting his first ER job, and trying some of these other things, like going into GP, even though that's not what he wanted, but he knew that was best for his family life, and like trying these things out because you're trying to balance that. How do I figure out who I am, and how do I still stay true to my dreams while also trying to be there for this other person, my progeny? How do I help with their aspirations, and how do I foster their dreams? So I can only have those thoughts in the hypothetical, but he's standing here with the perspective looking back, and he's got a kid going to college, and another one will be on the way soon, and he's now sort of in the, I don't know, he's in this sort of flux within his own career as well. So it's like when they leave the house, and now that he's left that job, what comes next? And I guess that's always the question. So I'm glad that I was able to talk to him about those things. I really benefited from listening to that perspective, or hearing that perspective. One thing that he kept saying was, I don't know if you caught it, but it's like all of these little moments in his life where it was, applying for a job, or, figuring out whatever's next in the career, or trying to negotiate and, on behalf of himself or on behalf of others. A lot of it was about knocking on doors, following up, not really harassing people, but doing that sort of extra thing that I feel like we're oftentimes very afraid of. It's like, oh, I didn't get the call back from the company, I guess they don't want to hire me. It's like, just go and stop by and knock on the door, and like whatever. And as it turns out, like, oh yeah, that's right. I did. I wanted to call you back, but just been so busy. And I think it's amazing how many opportunities we let go by us because we're not willing to reach out. And I saw that happen over and over and over again with him. He's just, taking these risks as if they're nothing. I mean, just, lets them kind of flow off his, he doesn't dwell on them as he's talking about them. It's just like a part of his life. And I think that that's a really important thing for all of us to remember, is that, applying is one thing, or putting yourself out there is one thing, but following up and really hunting down the opportunity is something else. And it's actually, that's what's going to get you whatever, gig or, whatever you're searching for. It's going to be that sort of extra piece of effort. Don't just put the application in and hope for the best. Go and follow up a bunch of different times. Find ways to make it happen, and just, force it. It's about the opportunities that we see in life, but then also the opportunities that we make, and those are the ones, those together make up the sum of experience that we have in this world. So I loved hearing that, over and over again about, and that helped him kind of get to the position that he ultimately is in today. Anyway, so that was, my conversation with TJ. Like I said, I have a lot more that I want to talk to him about. I have a lot more questions, but that's just going to have to be an episode for another time. So for now, thank you for listening. Thank you guys for your patience. And more are coming down the pipeline. Like I said, there's another 4 already recorded. It's just about editing them and sending them out. So that's going to be next. Keep a lookout, and thank you guys again. And in the meantime, may you get more than 2 consecutive hours of sleep, and I will be incredibly jealous. And with that, thank you again, and I'll see you next time.